to the Minutes to Win It podcast. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay, breaking down tonight's Wednesday slate. Another big one, but I'm particularly happy today just because I've seen a couple of blurbs, a couple of notes about Kevin Durant liking Boston, possibility that Boston has a shot to land him this summer. So as a Celtics fan, I'm a little happier. I'm a little chipper today, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and as someone who is sort of from the area but not really a fan, the NBA is a little more fun when Boston is good. And I think when you look back sort of a year or two ago, they had those draft picks, but they didn't really have like the coach established yet. Like Brad Stevens hadn't established himself yet, and they obviously didn't have the team they have now. So you look at things now, and they do have some appeal for stars, you know? They do have a little leverage there in terms of what their future is going to look like. So it'll be interesting. I don't know.
And it was LeBron's conference for the longest time, and now that that's kind of waning out, it would be fun to see some Durant-LeBron matchups towards the end of LeBron's years here in those Eastern Conference Finals. But Durant's still in the Thunder, and that leads us to the Vegas totals tonight, where that is one of the top total games tonight, sitting at 220, OKC and Boston. Just a 4.5-point spread. Kings New Orleans 222, Warriors Knicks 222 as well, but the 15-point spread there. It's pretty clear that the Warriors Knicks game's a GPP only, and that's pushing it. I'm not really targeting that game at all.
Again, if you're looking at that game, it's pretty tough to pay up for Warriors players tonight just because I guess you could bank on the Knicks keeping it close, but there's no logical reason for them to actually be able to keep that game close. Like this could be, I'd say likely range of outcomes is Warriors win by 20 to 30. I think that's a realistic
Damn, that's a bold prediction. 30 points. Curry's dropping.
I could see that. 50 to 60 fantasy points for Curry, but I don't think the upside is there because he's only going to be playing 3 quarters, you know?
So 60 points, that's not good enough upside for Curry?
No.
Yeah.
I like that's his ceiling range of outcomes is 50 to 60.
Yeah. I don't see him. I mean, I think 60's best outcome tonight. I don't think anything more, obviously. Yeah, but I think he just sits in that 40 to 50 range if he plays 3 quarters, which just isn't good at that price. And we'll get into that a little bit more later. But looking at some other games, Houston, LA, 216, Washington, Chicago, 212, Orlando, Charlotte, 211. Possible blowout concern in Charlotte, 9.5. Same with Cleveland and Dallas, 9.5. Really, I mean, the only game I'm not really eyeing tonight is Detroit and Atlanta outside of really 2 players.
Right, yeah. We're going to talk about those, but yeah, that's really a game that's not too appealing considering how big the slate is.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at other games. Everything else is over 205. They're outside of that one. Even Memphis and Minnesota is 206. And God, is iffy as Minnesota is as a team, there is block. It really is just given the players that they're rolling out there each night. Even a team like Minnesota could blow them out.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So it's something to consider. But looking at point guard tonight, we're looking at injuries. Derrick Rose will become a game-time decision. We saw Butler handle a lot of the balls he usually is, and with no Gasol as well. We saw Holiday get some time. Each one more gets some time. It just means more of a usage for Butler and the guys down low.
Right, and point guard's so strong. I don't really see the need to sort of take the risk on Rose if he does play. There's just plenty of other options for you.
Yeah, and look at some other ones here. Elfrid Payton, questionable tonight. We saw Brandon Jennings play a bigger role. That's something to keep an eye on. I still will not trust it in cash games. I will not be rolling out any Brandon Jennings, but GPPs, it's definitely worth a look, especially after the big game last night. And you were saying banking on 11 assists from Brandon Jennings is something you take that bet every time.
Right. I mean, when you look at the process of it, I'm still happy I sort of waited it out yesterday because at least now we see sort of the role that he would play in that offense if he were to have that. So now at least we know. Because, I mean, there was a chance that maybe he wasn't even going to be the main point guard yesterday, you know? It was just going to be a committee role or something crazy. So now that we know, I'm okay tonight with him in tournaments, but Yeah, it's still Brendan Jennings.
Yeah, he drew the start as CJ Watson came off the bench, but it was obviously Fournier and Oladipo that ran the show. And we also saw Jason Smith get down there with Vucevic out. But looking at the top options, it's a heavy slate as usual. You got Westbrook and Curry up top. Neither I'm too intrigued with paying Westbrook in a tougher matchup. Boston held him to 5 at 20, which is something they did last time out, and that's something that Boston does. They're just good against guards. He can get his 20-plus points, but I'm a little iffy on maybe another triple-double for him.
Yeah, it is a tougher matchup. Obviously, either one, like I mentioned, their ceiling, even in three quarters, is pretty high. But tonight, it doesn't necessarily make sense with some of the other higher-priced options that I just like a little more.
Yeah, I just prefer paying down for Chris Paul. I mean, looking at a matchup against Houston, that high total there, another close game, averaging 23 and 11 against Houston this season with 6.5 steals per game. I mean, he's 13 steals in 2 games for Chris Paul against Houston. That's something that they do a lot. Houston turns the ball over a ton.
Poor Patrick Beverley.
Yeah. I mean, him, Harden, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
They turn the ball over a ton. So Chris Paul, I mean, you got to look at that defensive upside as well. But looking at other guys, John Wall, Kemba Walker, Drew Holiday, all in that kind of similar range. Love Drew Holiday a lot. He's been coming off some down games and some blowouts and some minute restriction. But a matchup against Sacramento, he should bounce back plenty tonight.
Yeah, this is obviously, again, we talk about it every night. Kings and Lakers, you just load them up and fire them away. So Holiday's a pretty solid value. I mean, I look at Kemba and Wall, and I think they have, pretty much similar upside to Curry and Westbrook tonight with matchups considered. So I think paying down there, not really paying down, but paying down from the top options is kind of, if you want to still get that upside, I think there are players in that higher end range that aren't quite Curry and Westbrook.
Yeah, Paul as well, who's pretty similarly priced, but definitely a name to consider. Then you start getting cheaper, and you kind of hitting that another range. Rondo, Irving, Thomas. Like all three, I like Thomas a lot tonight. I just think that 73 price tag is, really solid. He's coming off a monster game, 46 points, and that's certainly something he could do again tonight in a fast-paced matchup against OKC, who turned the ball over a ton. They haven't been great against point guards this season. You're banking on this one staying close and staying high scoring. It's going to be coming from Isaiah Thomas on this side.
This is a correlation play matchup where you sort of mix and match from this game. I could see the perimeter and sort of some of the other options there as really good plays tonight. So yeah, Thomas is someone that I'm looking to sort of stack this game with.
Yep, me too. Getting down to value, there's a couple guys to keep an eye on. Norris Cole, questionable tonight. That would open things up for Tony Douglas, who minutes-wise, 38. They had the 19 against Milwaukee, but that was a situation that was just a mess due to minutes restrictions. 42-37 in the last 2 games before that. Been really solid. He came in that Golden State game and racked up with some garbage points, but overall, this matchup against Sacramento, if you start at the point guard spot, I like him a lot.
Yeah, this is one where it's worth waiting to see the injury news because he's a very solid play. I think he's in play for pretty much all formats if he does if Cole is out.
Yeah, we're hoping we get that news actually before 7, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Right.
Also, if you're at DK, that would be a nice pivot if that news does come out a bit later. Maybe dropping him down and bumping someone up in the later games there. Mm-hmm. So outside that, there's a couple other guys. We mentioned Brandon Jennings being an option. Marcus Smart played 32 minutes. He drew the start for Crowder there. Didn't play that bad. 12, 4, and 2 with the block and the steal. Not too bad there. Tougher matchup against Indiana, of course, but I like him a lot in tonight's matchup against OKC, where he went off for 26, 8, and 3 last time out. Just that monster total. You're going to be getting your shares of players from this game.
Yeah, you look at Smart and – obviously, he didn't have the greatest game in the world and maybe didn't help you win a tournament or anything. But seeing him get those minutes because of Crowder being out, it's sort of nice going forward and at his price. I think he could be a nice value tonight and for the next few games.
Yeah, he's averaging 27 minutes per game this season. If he sees 32 again, that's a pretty nice
Mhm.
bump. I mean, he was right around his season average last night, so you take it up in a better matchup. Maybe you see him getting a little closer, 28-30 from now here on out, and then still reaching that 35 plus upside.
Right, and he has those peripheral sort of games and upside where he can have 3 or 4 steals in a game and 2 or 3 blocks. So I mean, when those games happen and he's getting 5 extra minutes, that could be really big upside. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely in play.
Looking at the Memphis backcourt, there's a couple of punt options: Brian Tay Weber and Ray McCallum there. Um, you we know about Ray McCallum. We know about his Spurs backcourt experience. Came in, he's played 27 minutes, 28 minutes in the last 2 games there. What you're going to expect? Weber's been the guy who's dominated the minutes, 35, 32, and 40 over the last 3 games. You know Weber a little more than I do from his VCU days, and just because you dig deep.
Yeah, I'm a big A10 basketball guy because of UMass. So VCU is we weren't really VCU's rival, but we would play them and hope we were their rival, but we weren't good enough. But yeah, when you watch that team, they had this defense called Havoc, and they would press the whole game. And Weber was really the guy who sort of brought all that together. He's a defensive sort of get steals, get all those peripheral stats. So those steals you've seen the last 2 games aren't necessarily a fluke. I think that should continue. And he is an all right 3-point shooter too. So he might have a little more upside than his sort of first few games have shown.
Yeah, and with Minnesota ranking 21st in turnovers, you expect Weber to kind of go out and grab a couple more steals tonight, which helps his floor a little bit. Nothing more than just a punch GP play. I'm just hoping for the best.
Right.
Looking at shooting guard tonight, and there are top options as James Harden, Jimmy Harden, James Harden, Jimmy Butler.
We're calling him Jimmy now. Jimmy James Harden.
But James Harden, I'm not really going to be paying up for tonight. Tougher matchup against the Clippers. Never been a team he's really dominated and had that huge upside with. He's been good against them, but it's nothing too special, and I think I'd rather just pay it down and pay up for other stars.
Yeah, and again, so I'm just looking at Kevin Durant tonight as the guy over 10K that I'm wanting to pay for, or Boogie Cousins. So the Harden sort of Curry Westbrook, I'm just kind of not really touching them.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I like Jimmy Butler tonight. I mean, you're coming off a game where he shot 5 of 18 from the field, still put up 32 fantasy points. With Gasol out, his usage rate jumps about 4%. I just think at that price against this Washington defense that struggles on the perimeter, they struggle against shooting guards. He's just an easy play in all formats. And I think GPPs, I'm hoping people stay a little bit off of him because he still possesses pretty big upside, especially with Gasol out.
Yeah, Jason sold me on Butler with that usage rate with Gasol out. That's a blinking light number for sort of an increase in usage. So yeah, definitely a good play there. I mean, I think, and he's got the upside too. So tournaments and cash, definitely intriguing.
Looking a little bit cheaper. Batum is a small forward on FanDuel there, but he's shooting guard on DK. I like him a lot tonight. Pretty solid matchup against Orlando. Both him and Oladipo catching my eyes as both options in all formats tonight.
Mm-hmm. Both have that 40 to 45 fantasy point upside, and both have they can do it in a lot of different ways. So yeah, I like both of them tonight.
Looking a little bit cheaper, Fournier, the guy coming off a nice game. His usage just picked up a little bit with Vooch out, and he's a guy I don't expect 40 fantasy points out of him too often, but 33 and 3 last night, played 42 minutes, going to play big minutes again. It's a particularly tough matchup going up against Batum. I'm a little hesitant, and I think the guys around him, Wiggins and Levine, right there, I'd rather go with those two.
That tier is sort of solidified there from 62 to 57 on DraftKings. Turner, Levine, Fournier, and Wiggins, and they're all pretty solid in both formats. I mean, I like Fournier and Levine more tonight, but Wiggins has been really solid lately, and I think last night's game doesn't necessarily represent what Turner has been and what he could be going forward, you know?
Yeah. And then looking at Evan Turner, I mean, it's a much better matchup tonight. I think he's a guy I'm actually on more so tonight. I like Turner last night. It is an easier matchup. I think just because the status of the weak position last night led to more shares than I wanted of him. Tonight, different story.
Yeah, no, definitely has more upside than he showed last night. I think 30 to 35 is definitely his best range of outcomes tonight for what's most likely.
Yeah, especially if he's going to shift over to the playmaking role against OKC. I mean, that's a better spot than him lining up at the 3, which I don't see happening.
Right.
Looking cheaper, love JJ Redick tonight. Great matchup against Houston there, who they ranked 23rd in opponent 3-point percentage, which is where Redick shined. I mean, the guy's shooting 56% 3 games against Houston this season from the 3. He's got reasonable upside. I never really targeted him in GPPs, but I think in this matchup, we've seen him go off before against Houston. Now he's on play in all formats for me.
Yeah, and normally you don't think that way about JJ Redick, but he's been awesome against Houston this year. And I mean, I don't see why that would change considering the way Houston plays. So definitely.
I think he's really the only guy I'm touching at shooting guard that's that low. I mean, I don't like Jamal Crawford. The minutes haven't really been there, even though it's a solid matchup. He hasn't been great against Houston.
Yeah, I mean, Courtney Lee is getting minutes, but I don't know that I trust him, you know? Like, who knows if that's just sort of a 4-game sample that isn't representative of what he's going to be going forward. So maybe a pump play, but probably stick to one lineup with him or something like that.
Yeah, if you're needing a punt, if you're going stars and scrubs, Lee, 31, 26, 35, and 29 minutes over the last 4 games. Double-digit points in the last 4, 29, 27, 17, and 20 fantasy points. Not bad. Not great, but not bad either. Just your usual meh punt play.
Exactly.
Looking at the small forward here, love Kevin Durant tonight against a Boston team that I'm curious to see who's going to try and stop Durant. Because, one, they've struggled against small forwards all season. Now you take Crowder out of the mix. Durant's kind of come back down to earth a little bit here over the last few games. Obviously, the blowout against Portland. Obviously, a matchup against San Antonio. Struggled against Minnesota. But outside of that, before that, he was just constantly in the 60s each night. And he has that upside yet again tonight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, 3 games is something to look at, but it's not necessarily keeping me away from him against this Boston team. His price is reasonable for Kevin Durant. So, yeah, I like him. I think he has the highest floor of any player tonight other than, well, we'll get to him. But, yeah, so I really like Durant tonight.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And LeBron James, safe cash game option. I don't think he quite has the upside Durant does. I think if you're paying up a little bit more, I'd just rather go with Durant. But it's not a bad matchup here against Dallas. Pretty high total to here to target. Definitely has that triple-double upside when he handles the ball a little bit more. So safe cash game option. GPPs, I think I'd just rather pivot up to Durant.
Right, and hey, if you want to make one of those, I want to be different lineups or something like that. He's definitely in play to sort of pivot off Durant, but yeah.
Yeah, and just hoping maybe Durant doesn't go for the 60. Maybe he just comes back down to earth a little bit and still continues to hit maybe just 45 to 50.
Right.
You saved a little bit of money and not much of a difference there. But small forward's pretty weak tonight. Anthony, not really in play for me. Parsons, a GPP target at that price, definitely has upside. Tougher matchup, but he was successful the last time out against Cleveland.
Right. It's kind of an awkward matchup for him. We'll see sort of how things match up, but has tournament upside. I'd stay away. I think there are safer options in cash tonight.
Yeah, I'd rather just pay up.
Melo, avoid. Gay's intriguing to me. I mean, I don't think he's going to do what he did last night, but again, he's in play because of his price.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you there. I mean, just 6,200 below 7,000 on FanDuel, and the matchup's solid against New Orleans. And I think if you're maybe just looking at different Kings plays and still want to get exposure to that game because Cousins and Rondo are still going to probably be more popular, I like Gay at the price, especially being the cheaper of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets tricky once you get lower because you're looking at guys like Tobias Harris, Matt Barnes, Trevor Ariza, at Tony Allen. All kind of iffy plays for me. I think the upside is there for Barnes and Allen in this matchup. I'm not quite sure for Ariza.
Yeah, no, Ariza has some tough matchups against those Clippers small forwards, but that tier there, Harris, Barnes, and Ariza, I feel like they all have some upside, but they all make me uncomfortable as well, and I don't necessarily like them as plays, and I think I'd rather just pivot away from that range, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that could be the make or break area tonight. So if you target it and they hit, that's nice. You probably are sitting pretty. If they don't hit, you're probably sitting pretty damn low. So
Yeah.
they are a make or break range. And same with this next guy, Jeff Green. Great matchup for him. The minutes have been there, averaging just over 31 minutes over the last 6 games. 24 fantasy points on average. Great matchup against Houston, especially no Paul Pierce, so no other minutes, kind of snaking away when Pierce comes in and gets his 12 for the game just over his paycheck. So I'm looking at him tonight.
Poor Paul Pierce. But yeah, no, I mean Jeff Green. This might be one of those nights where he hits, and I think when you look at sort of the matchup and how things are lining up, price is good, matchup is good. 30 to 35 fantasy point upside with, I mean, it's Jeff Green, so he might even have higher than that. But range outcomes 30 to 35, and at that price, that's definitely hitting value for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just because small forward's so weak, and Mike Dunleavy back tonight is going to play was sick, so likely not going to see no Dougie McBuckets magic for cheap. But yeah, small forward's pretty weak. I'm not really looking at any other options. If Wesley Johnson was playing consistent minutes, he would be there, especially with his defensive upside. But outside of that,
right, and Stanley Johnson's getting worked back into the rotation, but I wouldn't look at that last game as something you can count on him tonight. But definitely keep an eye on him.
Yeah, that last game was more so just due to Detroit being completely humiliated by Washington. So I checked the score. It was like 2 minutes left in the third, or 2 minutes left in the first, and they had like 6 points. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Wow.
So moving on to power forward, and well, it's boogie time.
It's boogie time.
Coming off a pretty average game by boogie concerns, only shot the ball 10 times. I mean, that's something that is rare for Cousins. But put up 22, 8, and 3 last night with 7 blocks with steals. Tonight, I'm looking for the gigantic upside that we've seen a lot of times lately. In the past 5 games, Cousins has gone off for 70 or more fantasy points in 3 of them. 3 of them against New Orleans.
It's such a wild. That's a wild grouping right there. And once I was shown that, it's a boogie night. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. It's a boogie night. I mean, FanDuel again. You just have to lock him in there. It just makes sense, Even if he's higher owned, even if he's chalky, you just have to throw him in there on nights like this.
Yeah, I mean, he's 11K. I can see the general concern if you're not willing to pay up, but with FanDuel's pricing being what it is, and with some value pump plays that might open up, he definitely works in. You can definitely go the more balanced route. I think DK, I'm looking just 600 more than Anthony Davis. That's easy. That's an easy call for me, as much as I like Davis, but I just rather pay 600 more for Boogie.
And hey, worst case, I mean, you could play them both. You take a big cap hit, but I think tonight's a night where you might be able to fit 2 10K plus guys in a lineup. So if you want to do that type of Davis Cousins going at each other type correlation play, that's in there for me.
Yeah, especially with the possible cheap guards that are going to maybe open up with injury news later on today. That's something to consider. But sticking in that mid-range, you're kind of skipping over. I'm not really looking at Draymond Green or Millsap, not Kevin Love either. Even though the matchup's solid, Love's just been so inconsistent. And he just doesn't possess too much upside. I mean, basically 35 points is what his ceiling is right now.
Right, and there's a few guys down a little lower that just make a little more sense tonight. As you mentioned, Green against New York, you just are worried about that blowout concern, and Millsap against Detroit, they're relatively solid defensively, so I don't want to touch him either.
Yeah, and you mentioned the guys lower. Gorjai Dang pretty big drop because he had a pretty big, kind of stretch there where he didn't do much. He had a couple of games in the teens. But back-to-back 30-plus games, he had one over 40. Minutes have been a little bit more consistent. 33, 31, 28, 32 over the last four. Love him a lot tonight in this matchup against Minnesota. They're not the team anymore that's defensive, and they're in 24th in rebounding. I see another double-double night for Deng.
Yeah, definitely one of those double-double nights for him, and his price has kind of finally come down again, so definitely makes it an intriguing value in cash for sure.
Yeah, and then Marvin Williams, it's hard to get away from him in cash games and even GPPs just because his values, just his overall value from his salary is just really solid. He's averaged 30 points in 2 games against Orlando. They struggle against power forwards. Below 6K, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, and again, like we mentioned with the small forwards, there's a range in that like high 5 to low 6K range. I really like this range at power forward. So Deng, Williams, Ryan Anderson's in play, and Serge against that Boston front court is intriguing as well.
Yeah, both Anderson and Ibaka great GPP targets, while I'm more relying on Deng and Marvin Williams in cash. But both are all 4 I'm going to have tons of exposure to in formats. So going cheaper, Mirotic and Gibson are the guys down low I like targeting with Gasol out. Washington, not a great rebounding team. They rank in the bottom 5. Overall, you look at the matchup, with Markieff Morris, it's not too intimidating for Mirotic. Gibson, he's done fine against Washington this season. He's done fine whenever Gasol's out. So pretty safe place for me and pretty safe salary reliefs, even in GPPs.
Yeah, and I think you're pivoting off of Tristan Thompson to Gibson most likely, but I think Thompson is in that 30 fantasy point range, which is decent value at 4,900. And then, Jason Smith for Orlando, only 3,900. He's in play again as a sort of punt option.
Yeah, with Vooch out, coming off a monster game, 25 and 13, was never on my radar. Completely off the grid for me. I wasn't going to play him, but, well, if you played him in GPPs, you're probably sitting pretty because he was low owned. And on a night where you had to be a little different, he worked out pretty big.
And again, I don't think you're looking for that type of game again, but if he can get 25 at 3,900, you're okay with that.
Yeah, and Skiles is going to run the hot hand, so just keep that in mind. If Ilyasova comes in and hits a couple shots and gets going and rebounds and playing all board, he's the one who's going to get the leading minutes. So that's always something to keep an eye on.
Definitely.
So moving over to center, we mentioned Gasol, we mentioned Vooch being out, everything about that. That's pretty much it. We know what's been happening there. Kelly Olynyk, questionable for tonight's game. He was ruled out last night. Getting close to return, which would put a little bit of a mix in at the front court. Maybe Sullinger takes a little bump if Olynyk comes back, but Sullinger's been playing really well.
Yeah, Sullinger's been playing awesome. And again, if Olynyk comes back, maybe it bumps his minutes down to what he was getting before the Jay Crowder injury, but not really a worry for me.
Yeah, me either. His fantasy points per minute have been really solid. And obviously over the last 4 games that Houston won took a pretty big bump, but 17, 10, 2, 2.5 steals per game, right around 28, 29 minutes per game. Still, sitting at that price tag, 6,000, he's, in the 6,000s on FanDuel. Definitely an intriguing option tonight.
Yeah, one of my favorite sort of lower price center options.
Yeah. But looking up top, obviously Cousins on FanDuel, but you're looking at Towns against the front court of Memphis that just not very good anymore. I think he's more of a tournament play for me. I'd rather go with either Howard or just kind of go a little bit lower. I like Horford as well.
Yeah, Howard's the cash game for me. Cash game play for me tonight. He's just been so consistent lately, and maybe he doesn't have the same upside as some of these other centers, but he's been really solid lately. Towns, I really like Towns, and on a different night, I would like him more. But it just feels like with the guys I'm paying up for, it's not going to work out for me. But he is a good play.
Yeah, Howard, I'm looking at him in all formats. I think yes, he's a great cash game play. I think he does have the upside in the Clippers matchup tonight. I just think with their rebounding skills and him having to be out there,
Yeah.
Hell, we could watch a game that lasts 4 hours because they just hack Howard and they just hack Jordan.
It's true. Yeah, that'll be painful for you, but if you played him on DK or
Yeah.
FanDuel, you'll be all set.
Yeah, but I mean, I like Howard tonight. I think he's a pretty solid play in all formats, and Drummond as well. You're looking at what he's dominated Atlanta 21-15 in 2 games, which makes sense. Atlanta ranks 29th in rebounding. They struggle against centers. Drummond's a little bit inconsistent, but 7,800 on DK is a very enticing price tag.
Yeah, and again, I think playing two of these guys together is always intriguing just because it seems like their floors are so high compared to some of the other positions. So, I mean, I'm looking at Drummond as a pretty reasonable play at his price tonight.
Yeah. I mean, he's coming off he's been a little bit inconsistent of late, which is why you definitely lean on Howard in cash because coming off a game Charlotte, he should have dominated that front court, went just 5-9. Foul trouble's been a little bit of an issue in the last 3 games. Even in the matchup against Philly, that wasn't a particular blowout. Pretty casual night for him. But outside of that, I mean, I like DeAndre Jordan as well, especially as a pivot off of Howard in that game. Both teams have kind of just lacked defensively, so you're definitely looking for that exposure. One guy whose minutes are completely unpredictable right now is Marcin Gortat, 25, 8, 19, and 33 over the last 4 games.
Oh. Yeah, and again, the center position's relatively strong tonight, so there's no need to sort of go out on that limb, you know?
Yeah, I don't think so either, especially when Horford's sitting right there, who's been a little bit more consistent. His minutes have been there. He had the blowout game against Indy, but still been really solid minutes-wise over the last, month and a half.
Yeah, I really like Horford tonight to get into sort of that 35 fantasy point range tonight. I mean, I think he does have up to 40. I mean, I could see him get to 40 as well. So at that price on DraftKings, definitely intriguing. But as we mentioned, you really want to pay up for Boogie on FanDuel. So
yeah, that's the route I'm going.
Yeah.
But a GPP target, Enes Kanter. The guy's been rolling over the last week and a half here. And you're looking at games 38, 33, 34, 26, and 35 in the last 5 games. The minutes aren't always there. He did play 28 against San Antonio, but just 22 against Portland. Big high usage guy, solid rebounder, goes and scores. Perfect matchup, perfect total for him tonight against Boston. They're ranked 20th in rebounding. Love Kanter tonight, just as I did against Portland the other night. Pretty similar for me.
And as I mentioned, if this was just a blank name and I didn't know it was Enes Kanter, I would like this a lot more. So I'm going to remove the bias. I do like this play tonight. He's definitely got enough upside at the center position where even if some of the top options go off, he can still hold it down for you with the price difference.
Yeah, definitely. All right, here we go. Favorite non-Boogie player tonight? Who's scoring the highest for you?
Oh, that's easy. Durant.
You're going Durant?
Going Durant.
I'm gonna go Chris Paul.
Ooh, okay.
So non-Boogie high scores, I'm going Chris Paul, and you got Durant. Just to keep it different, although I do like Durant a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's going to wrap things up here with the minutes to win it. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.